So it's showtime for the World Eaters then, some enormous reveals coming out of Games Workshop's live preview, though this does all but confirm that the previous leaks were accurate, and I feel that to at least some people that's probably not going to be the best thing. Hello and welcome back to Warspecs Tactics, where today we're talking about Games Workshop's Warhammer previews, the ones that they have from their live reveal show, associated with their Grand Narrative Tournament event. First up, I thought we'd take a look at the new World Eaters, where perhaps the headline news here is that they've revealed the Codex cover. We've got a brand new unit of World Eaters Possessed called Eightbound, a new melee-specific cultist unit called Jakhals, and a rather intimidating looking leader for them, the alternate build of the Lord Invocator's kit, the regular Lord on Juggernaut, a few more units confirmed that they will be in the Codex, and perhaps some slightly disappointing news that leak's points cost page does appear to be accurate now, so perhaps the World Eaters might be having a slightly smaller roster than people might have expected, and it does seem confirmed that they're not going to be getting any unique Terminators, for example. Still though, first up is perhaps the biggest reveal of the day, and that's these new World Eaters Eightbound. That rumoured unit name from the points leaks was exactly accurate, and these are supposedly 8 blood letters bound into one Space Marine, making for one very angry World Eater indeed. Kind of interesting that they've chosen to give World Eaters unique Possess but not unique Terminator models this time round. I guess it always gives them the possibility to go back and give them more when they do cycle back to their Codex next. These guys are big and very angry looking, a dedicated melee unit packing dual melee weapons, one on each arm, and there's two different ways that you can build them in game. Either you have them as the standard 8-bound, ones that are maybe a bit less mutated and are armed with dual chain weapons, or there's the option for the exalted 8-bound, far more demonically mutated and packing more exotic gear. I did think that the lore is kind of fun for these guys. Apparently they bind up a Space Marine alongside 8 summon blood letters, all in a big box of brass, see what emerges, and then use them as shock troopers with an angry Space Marine that's full of blood letters, possessing unnatural strength and even more anger and rage. Apparently if the Space Marine manages to achieve union with the blood letters and they all fuse to become one weird being, then that's when they become the 8-bound and get even more dangerous due to their mastery. Models wise, they're big chunky possessed Space Marines with massive amounts of muscles. It does seem like they're going for kind of half power armor here. World Eaters do seem to like fighting with bare arms a fair bit, and these guys are definitely going for that. They look like big and bestial Chaos Space Marines with the backpack that looks like it might have fused to become a Rune of Khorne, and the standard ones have some subtle mutations, like things like claws poking out of their boots for example. It looks like these guys are going to be sold in boxes of 3, I'd guess maybe somewhere along the £32.50, €42 or $55 mark. That'd be similar to Space Marine Blade Guard, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw something similar to that. From the points league, the 8-bound are an elite's choice for 40 points per model, 3 to 6 models, and I guess that they might have a few limitations similar to Chaos Possessed. Exalted 8-bound are 45 points, just 3 models, and there's no war gear upgrade cost included for any of those, so if any of those individual weapons are actually representative of different profiles, I guess it would mean that you could chop and change them for free, or just have them all included as per the box. In the stream they did say that they're basically a super powerful combat unit, as you'd probably expect for the raw amount of rage and destructiveness there. At least the exalted ones do appear to have some options for mutated chain fists as well. Maybe that could make them a bit better at cutting through tanks. If we take a quick closer look at the other models, then here's the standard 8-bound. It looks like they all have different variants on standard chain weapons. You can certainly see their butcher's nails feeding into their skulls there, and a few of them do have some weapons that are chained onto their wrists, as seems to be the fashion for World Eaters. I think they look pretty nice and destructive. I think personally I might have preferred maybe a little bit more red plated armour on them. I think I'm probably slightly more of a fan of the standard Chaos Space Marine Possessed myself, but I guess with these guys looking like they're on a very similar scale, you could probably mix and match a bit if you wanted to create something cool and custom. It does appear that there's plenty of mutated weirdness available in the box though. These ones are the Exalted 8-bound. A couple of them seem to have chain fists that are fused in with their flesh, and plenty of mutated bits like horns, teeth and spikes sticking out of them at various angles. Overall I think they've done okay with the models. They certainly look incredibly savage and not the sort of thing that you want to be anywhere near at all on the battlefield. Maybe just a little bit on the busy side though. I'm not sure they'll be to literally everyone's taste. Let me know what you think of them down in the comments. What do you make of Possessed but more Khornate? Moving on to the other major unit preview, we've also got these new World Eaters Jakhals, unique melee cultists, which have supposedly been made extra angry and dangerous by infusing them with 8 drops of World Eater's blood. They do seem to be far more chunky and muscly compared with standard cultists that we've seen before. Again, it looks like they're very happy to dual-wield combat weapons here. Most of them have 2 chain weapons, one in each hand, though a few have different variants. Looks like the entire squad is going to be dedicated to purely close combat and no range at all. Doesn't look like there's any option for stubbers or flamers or things that you might have seen on other cultist squads. Quite a lot of their weapons and equipment do seem fairly scarred and battle damaged as well. I guess that really implies that they've been just smashing their way through the foe all day long, and it seems that one of them can be built with an icon bearer as well, a nice rune of corn with a bunch of severed heads hanging from it. Models wise, it looks like the unit's going to be available in squads of 10. They really do look like they're going to be a World Eater's mirror to cultists, and according to the points leak, there'll be 7 points per model, and if normal cultists are indeed absent, they'd be the cheapest troops choice, pretty relevant for that and maybe holding objectives and things, or you could maybe mob them up into a big unit for 140 if it made sense to. Here's a quick look at the full complement of the squad. 10 of them with all sorts of flavours of chainswords and chain axes. Looks like they have some sort of blood tanks on their back. I guess maybe that's the thing that's going to be augmenting them and giving them their extra muscles with the World Eater's blood. I think they're a pretty cool looking unit, to be honest. Definitely a very dynamic and brutal looking cultist squad. I feel like it's just pretty cool the way that they're holding just really quite massive combat weapons, one on each hand, and then a lot of them are just basically pinwheeling them towards the enemy, looking kind of unstable but very hard hitting. Looks like the World Eaters are probably going to be very spoiled for various different flavours of melee units to charge towards the enemy and hit them very hard, though I probably would be kind of surprised if the Jackal cultists wind up being some of the best things to take for that role. Hopefully they manage to keep them somewhat balanced between them and Berserkers, so both of them can be useful for different battlefield roles. They did give us a bit of a close-up as to the Jackal unit champion as well. This guy's apparently a Jackal Dishonoured. By the way that they're calling him a Dishonoured, I do kind of wonder whether or not this guy might be a Space Marine who's been stripped of his power armor. He certainly looks big enough, and is very much towering over his cultist friends. In the stream, they described him as the biggest and nastiest of the new cultists, and in his right hand he's got a big chain blade. In the left he's got a skull mace, which I'm going to guess is going to be called a skull masher, that was listed as a points cost upgrade on the Jackal datasheet from those leaked points values. There's also one listed called a Mauler Chainblade as well. I'm not sure if that's what he's carrying in his right hand. It could potentially be the great big chainblade type thing that one of the ones was carrying in the last image. Perhaps a slightly heavier different chain weapon to mix in with a unit to deal with tougher targets maybe. This guy does appear to answer us the question as to who was the guy lurking behind Angron in that leak picture. It does look like it's him. So a cultist unit champion as opposed to a unique character, it would seem. Before we move on to the Codex, we've next got the Lord on the Juggernaut. Perhaps the least surprising of the Codex reveals. This guy is the alternate build for the Lord Invocatus kit that we saw before. He looks like he was a partly possessed Chaos Lord, and it sounded like he might be a unique character, and this guy is the generic version of them. He's a Khornate Lord on a Juggernaut with a chainsword and plasma pistol. Apparently the Juggernaut will get a bladed horn type attack, probably very similar in profile to what the ones in Codex Chaos Demons get. I still imagine that he'll hit very decently hard. Hopefully they give that chainsword enough damage to make it count against hard targets as well as just light infantry. Here's just a slightly better picture of him, and it seems that we do have a head swap for this guy as well as Lord Invocatus. I kind of wonder if there'd be any other options for arming him with different weapons as well as just this chainsword. Overall, looks like a pretty cool model. Not a lot to dislike about a Chaos Lord on a Juggernaut with a big chainsword, to be honest. Next up, we have the official announcement of Codex World Eater itself. Really quite nice Codex art, I think. A great big corn berserker, or maybe a berserker champion or something, with 2 different chain axes, and then some disturbing possessed looking guys in the bottom left. I wonder if those are representing the Eightbound or something. We know that this book's going to be coming out sometime in winter, but they haven't actually given us an official release date for it yet. My guess would be anywhere between mid-January and mid-February at the moment. We still have to have the actual full release of the Guard book alongside the new miniatures for them, and it's almost certain that this book will be after that. As well as the book as well, they did give us a few nice shots of World Eaters having a good fight against a few worshippers of the Corpse Emperor, and in those shots they did give us a few more clues as to what sort of things might be included in the Codex. A couple more units that we might expect to appear do seem to be popping up. First up, in this one we've got Angron with a bunch of Khorne Berserkers. We also do have a Khorne Lord of Skulls, a Lamb Raider, and the new Chaos Demon Prince here, all of which should be playable in the Codex, I guess. I think we've got those 8-bound and Exalted 8-bounds lurking in the background there. The World Eater's Demon Prince is in the artwork for this one, I guess that's slightly interesting in itself, as the Demon Prince kit wasn't in the Codex Chaos Space Marines book, so I suppose it might have representation for different bits of war gear, like that warp bolter bit on the left of the model. I'm not really too surprised to see the Lord of Skulls making an appearance as well, and it's going to be really interesting to see Angron's stat line when they eventually show it off. I'm sure he's going to be absolutely savage in combat, as he well should be. Perhaps one of the biggest disappointments of the preview, though, is this image that they showed us off here. It does indeed look like World Eaters aren't going to be getting any unique Terminators. I feel like quite a lot of people were looking forward to them. It just seemed like a very obvious release for them to do, given that they did Thousand Sons Terminators and then 2 flavours of Death Guard ones. It seemed like the World Eaters were kind of bound to follow suit. I guess if you're wanting to field Red Butchers at the moment, it is just going to be with the standard Chaos Space Marine kit. Maybe they'll have some sort of stratagem or points cost upgrade or something to allow them to represent Red Butchers in the game. Maybe giving them a melee lift above standard Terminators perhaps. In the current rules they fight twice and are absolutely savage. I wouldn't be too surprised if they change things around a little bit when the Codex comes out. I guess we'll have to wait and see on that front. To be fair, the standard Chaos Terminator kit is really quite a nice one. It means that World Eaters players who have picked them up can then rest easy and know that they will be able to field them in the new Codex. So I guess that is a positive, even if a lot of people might have been hoping for unique ones. Talking of that, it really does look like the leaked points cost page was on the money now. When we looked at this last, I was a little bit suspicious of this. There were all sorts of things that just seemed a bit unlikely, from leaving out generic choices to the oddly convenient page number of 88 and Angron being only 360 points, but at least with the unit names, it does look kind of plausible that this could be accurate now. It did correctly predict Jakhals and the Eightbound, both units that Games Workshop just showed off. Even amongst all the other publicity shots, it does seem like everything that Games Workshop has released has tallied perfectly with this, so the slightly odd choices for what you can field and what you can't would look like they're going to be represented here. I guess it's still not impossible that this could be an early version of it, and points costs and units could be added or removed, but if I had to guess now, I would guess that this will be the page that we actually get when the Codex comes out. If it's true, it might mean a few more disappointments and some odd omissions. For example, there's no demon engines for the World Eaters featured here, so no Blood Slaughterer type things or anything like that. The only ones that we get are the ones that we have already, things like Mauler Fiends, the Corn Lord of Skulls, and Defilers. Otherwise, this would imply that there's no standard cultist, it is just Jackals now. So it's World Eaters unique units or go home, I suppose. No option for a generic Lord on foot is a very weird choice. The only options in the HQ section are the Massive Execution and the various Lords on Juggernaut, plus the Demon Prince and Khan the Betrayer. The war gear choices also do tally with no new Terminator kit as well. It lists things like Reaper autocannons and things, and looks very similar to the generic Chaos Space Marine one. As there's nothing else on this list that looks like we haven't had released at the moment, I would guess that this is probably going to mean that we're not going to see any more models for the World Eaters besides what we've seen. So it would appear to be World Eaters, Angron, these new Eightbound, and the Jackals, and the Lord Invocator's HQ choice. I'll be interested to hear what you guys have to say. I was kind of hoping that we might get a little bit more with things like Demon Engines and Terminators. It is a bunch of cool stuff, but it's certainly not quite as much as the Death Guard received, them being the poster child of 8th edition. In any case, let me know what you think of the new World Eaters. Do you like the Eightbound and the Jackals, and why or why not? And if that points cost page does indeed turn out to be accurate, then what are your thoughts on the new Codex and the units that will and won't be in there? I'll certainly cover any more news that we get or rules previews from the World Eaters, so feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see that, and I'll hopefully be back in the not too distant future talking more chaos from Games Workshop's previews. Finally, if you've been enjoying all the videos on the channel, feel free to check out the Auspex Tactics Patreon page, which is linked down in the video description. It is the thing that allows me to dedicate the time to make all the coverage of Warhammer 40k news and tactics things, so if you are enjoying a lot, any support is enormously appreciated. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.